And good morning, everybody. Glad you're here. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group with my very good friend, Jose Sabal. How are you doing today, Jose?
I'm doing very well. Here in Florida. It's very sunny right now, and we are getting into the 90s already.
Wow. Wow. How's the humidity down there?
Terrible for the last 2 days.
Really? This
Yes.
early? Wow.
Yep. Yeah, terrible the last few days.
Well, here in Colorado, it's going to be in the low 80s today. So beautiful, beautiful May day here in Colorado.
Ah,
So first off, for everybody, before we get too much into the chat here, my name is Bryan Armentrout, as I said, and this is the Food Safety Chat. And every Friday, we are honored to come to you at this time, so 8 a.m. Mountain Time, where I'm at in Colorado, 10 a.m. Eastern, where Jose is in Florida, and we talk about all things food safety. And the purpose of this chat is interactive. This is not meant to be a lecture or a PowerPoint or something like that, where we give you a bunch of information. This is meant to help promote a discussion and share kind of the things that Jose and I have learned along the way in our careers. We both been in industry and have consulting businesses and help people with these type of things. And one of our core values is that food safety is not a point of competition because we are all in this together. If one company has a recall, it impacts us all. So we need to be aware of these and help each other out. And this is our little bit to help promote that. So we're very happy to be here today. So one of the rituals we like to do here on the chat is, as we mentioned, so I'm in Colorado here in the US and Jose's down in Florida, is let us know where you're at in the world. So our assistant Renee, who's in the Philippines, is on the line. So always good to see Renee. Tammy, good to see you. And Tim, of course. And John, awesome. Oh, cold and wet in Indiana. Yikes. So it's always fun to see, and you'll be amazed the people around the world who join us for this chat, because we have this stream and we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So this is a lot of fun, and it's a great way to share information. Good morning, Mario. So nice to see you. And part of this too, right? What's fun with this is we talk about these topics. You can interact with the other guests on the chat as well too. So this is a great way to make new connections and expand your food safety circle. So with that, part of what I always want to do with these chats, right, is jump in right away. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it, Jose. Right? But first, what we're going to do is we are going to share a drink together. Everyone, mine is coffee, and Jose's should be tea. In his beautiful glass mug. Very nice.
this is good.
My coffee's tasting extra special today. My friend Austin is joining us. Good to see you down in Albuquerque today. Austin lives up here in Colorado as well. And of course, Bryan from San Diego. Bryan's been very busy recently with his activities around foreign supplier verification. So Bryan is an excellent resource for that. Cheryl, nice to see you. And of course, with Jose, we have our emails on here as well. And so as I had mentioned, Jose and I both have our own consulting businesses, and we have our emails on here. So if you would like to reach out to us and you have questions on the topic today or anything else, we are happy to help. One of the fun things, Jose, and I'm sure you'll agree with this too, in what we do, is being able to share our knowledge and help the next generation of food safety professionals along the way. And so if we can help in a small way, we love doing it. And part of this too, right, is to get to the point that we've got to in our careers. We've gone through a lot of pain and a lot of mistakes, right? And so a lot of what you're hearing in these chats that we have is information that we've gained through real world, sometimes difficult experience to get to these points, right? So don't reinvent the wheel, and don't think that you have to go through that pain too. So with that,
hey, Bryan, a lot of root cause analysis and prevention of reoccurrence.
Yeah, and so part of this too, right, is working with companies to get that expertise in. So people like Jose, if you ever have the chance to take a class from Jose, he is one of the best teachers out there. I don't think I've seen any rating from a client of Jose who gave him less than 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, the guy, he's the guy you want to learn from.
Thank you.
So, oh no, you deserve it. So today we're going to talk about a really interesting topic, Jose. And it's kind of one that floats under the radar screen, and people, especially on the consumer side, people, you and me on grocery stores and things like that, don't realize that this system even exists, right? It's kind of, it's below the surface, right? And that's co-manufacturing or copackers, right? And so I guess first off, what is a copacker, Jose? What is it?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, is someone that is making your products.
Mm-hmm.
In simple words, one of the when I was thinking about the topic, Bryan, one of the things that I stop and start thinking about the copackers, and I say, well, copackers, I mean, in some way, are fundamentally suppliers of yours. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're supplying to you your product. That is the only thing. So it is your brand what they are supplying you. Mm. So it's not just a simple risk that when you are receiving the, I'm going to say, ingredient from, I'm going to say, suppliers of your products to be using your process, you can just reject it. That's it. In this case, you are going to be receiving your own brand, which is, if it's not in full compliance with its own specification, you have a big problem.
Yeah, right. So yeah, if I'm a manufacturer and I'm making a well-known retail brand, I may go out to a copacker or a co-man, right? We use those terms interchangeably, and contract with them to make my product. And if I'm a consumer, and let's say I'm a manufacturer of a cereal or something like that, right? And I may have a production facility. I may have 2 or 3 co-manufacturers that are helping me out with that. But from the viewpoint of the consumer, they're all the same.
Yeah.
They have no idea. Yeah. So why do people use them? I mean, there's a variety of reasons. And I think one of the earliest reasons that people would use copackers is startups, right? So I'm a young entrepreneur, and I've got this idea for this really cool new product. And I'm doing benchtop work and I'm figuring it out and things like that, right? I want to get my product to market. And I don't have $5 million to build a production line or something like this. I don't even have a plant, right? I'm just doing this at my house. But I've been going to trade shows and people really like what I'm making. And it's like, wow, it's time to kind of jump into this and see if I can make this thing work. In most cases, what people will do in that situation is find a copacker to make that product for them.
Yep, exactly.
So if you're the copacker, right, I would come to you and say, oh, okay, Mr. Sabal, I want to make this new super cool granola bar. Are you able to help me? And you would say, yep, we have production lines that manufacture granola bars, and we can make them to your specification, and et cetera, et cetera. So then you would come back to me with a quote for the cost of doing that. Say, okay, we can supply you with 20,000 bars a week out of our facility here in Florida. And here's going to be your final delivered price to your warehouse in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing, right? This is so easy. No, it's not.
No, it is not actually. Yes.
There's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes, right? And it's not just little companies or startups that use co-manufacturers either. It's also big companies and everybody in between. Because let's say that I'm at a big company and I've got a production line, and that line is at 95% utilization. There's nothing else that's coming out of that line, and orders keep growing and growing. And in order for me to buy a new line, I have to spend a lot of money. And now I have 2 lines that are operating at less than 50%. Now I've got another problem, right? So I'm maxed out, and now I've got 2 lines that are way underutilized. Yeah. So what will happen in a lot of cases, as that production builds and those orders start increasing, I will go out to a co-manufacturer and say, hey, listen, I want you to make some of this product for me as well. And a lot of this too could be tied to logistics. Let's say that I have a company on the East Coast, and my market is growing like crazy in California. Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense to ship the product clear across the country. I'm losing a lot of money doing that.
Yes.
So it's like, I'm gonna partner with a co-manufacturer in California to make my product for me on the West Coast until the business grows enough for me to have a plant out there.
Right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
And so look at this, Bryan. Regarding this topic, one of the things that it is it is something that we need to consider in this process of analyzing hazards and identifying how we can produce it. Well, how can our copackers produce a product that is safe for us? One very important thing that we need to consider is food fraud. Yes, I agree that most of the time, food fraud is going to be a concern whenever you are receiving ingredients, raw materials, packaging material, and so on. And eventually the chemicals that you're using for cleaning and sanitation, potentially. Okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, taking that out, if you're using a copacker, part of the deal is to make sure that they are manufacturing the product according to your specifications. Now, is it possible that because of a lack of overseeing, a lack of inspection, a lack of audits or something like that, these guys start playing some tricks here and then using some inferior grade ingredients or something like that? Oh, yes, that is very possible to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So John, the issue of purchasing, which is going to be done by your supplier. They might be purchasing low-grade ingredients, and at the end, that is a reason why they're going to be shipping you low-grade products.
Absolutely, right. You need to have visibility into this, and I think John brings up a good point here. Right, is private label. People don't realize this. So Costco, Kirkland, their brand, right? That's their private label brand. Does Costco make any product? Nope. Costco doesn't make anything. Costco will contract with other companies to make Kirkland wine or Kirkland cheese or Kirkland, you name it, right, in the store. They go to those manufacturers that make those products under their own labels or co-manufacturers that make those products and say, hey, we want a Kirkland variety of this. And so that's that management piece too, right? So if you're working in food safety and quality assurance at Costco, you have to manage those just like you would as any other manufacturer. Thanks, John. That was a good one to bring up. I appreciate that. And a lot of people don't know that. So Mario has a good question here. Let's see. What is the difference between copacker, co-man, contracted service? It seems that some standards define terms different ways, including FSMA. What do you think of that one?
Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to say in order to introduce my very good friend Mario, it's hola Mario, ¿cómo estás? Buen día por allá. And now we're making this show bilingual.
Awesome. More people, the better.
So again, what we will need is to make a difference between the kind of service that these suppliers are producing. Because as you say, Mario, can I say that a copacker is a provider of a service of making our product? Eventually, it's one way to see it. I do not disagree with that. So at the end, the way that you want to call your copacker, co-manufacturer, or whatever you call it, maquila in Mexico, whatever you want to call it, that's 100% up to you. What we need to make sure for food safety is that whatever they do is, number one, safe, and number two, fit for food. That's at the end the goal. And if we look at systems approach and we have that goal, there is no problem, because it doesn't matter what kind of service, including the co-packing and co-manufacturing, it doesn't matter. You are going to be looking for potential ways that your product may get adulterated because of those activities. And actually, that was a reason why I was bringing up the economically motivated adulteration in food fraud.
Yeah, and I'll tag onto that as well for Mario. I think too, a lot of it with the terminology. So for me, I mean, so co-man and co-packer, right? So co-manufacturing, co-packer, pretty close terms. But a contracted service, that's kind of a little bit lower in concern. So let's say, for example, I have finished product and Costco comes to me and says, hey, listen, Bryan, your product that you're manufacturing, you've got these 3 different flavors and 3 different packages. Yes. I would like to have at Costco a package that's a sampler of all 3 of those in one package. And I'm like, okay, right? But I can't do that in my plant. So I may contract with somebody else to say, hey, listen, I'm going to ship you these products. I want you to repack them into this arrangement and send it to Costco for me, right? So they're not actually touching the product or things like this, but I'm still going to be concerned about traceability and lot codes and these type of things, right? So they still need to be approved, right? To Tammy's point, we'll get to you in a second here, Tammy, but they're not actually making the food piece of it for me, right? So I'm a little more comfortable, but there's still things that need to be done.
To your point, Bryan, sorry to interrupt you.
No.
To your point, look at this. It is possible that your copacker is just packing products, packing food products. Okay, right. They're not manufacturing; they're just packing those products. So they're going to be packing for you. But look at this one, which is something that in my experience, I went through that. Well, there was a company that says, "Can you please manufacture these for me, copacker?" Yes, I can do this. Not a problem. I was assigned with a job to oversee the operation. Hey, Jose, go there and perform an audit. And when I arrive, okay, so where is the production? Where are the ingredients? Oh, we're not doing this. We have a copacker of ours doing that for us.
Oh.
What about that? People are not thinking that this may happen.
Yeah.
But these are things that happen.
Right. So you may not even know, right? So there may be so like use another scenario in that example, right? Let's say that it's the trade show, right? I'm a sales guy and I come to you and say, "Hey, Jose, I've got this really cool new product I think you should buy," right? And I've got some samples and you try it. You're like, "Oh, that's really good," right? And now that I've sold it, I'm like, "Oh, geez, now I need to find somebody to make it," right? And now I got to scramble around and find somebody to make that product. And you have no idea. You think I'm the manufacturer. Right. And I'm not even the manufacturer. Right. So you need to understand these things. And I think it gets to what Tammy is saying here, right? Co-packers worry a lot about production type packaging and volume. Most won't take small businesses. You might have to go to a ghost kitchen first. Ooh, ghost kitchens, right? Corey talks about that a lot. Just so everybody knows that terminology, ghost kitchen. This is a crazy thing that's kind of going on right now.
Oh, yes.
I can set up a website, Bryan's Homemade Restaurant Kitchen. And you, Jose, go online and say, "Oh, look at all this wonderful food that Bryan makes. I'm going to order some gazpacho from Bryan." And I get the order on the computer. I go, "Oh, cool." And I go to my kitchen at my house and I make a batch of gazpacho and I send it to you. And you think it's coming from a restaurant. It's coming from my house.
Yes.
Craziness.
And by the way, remember that you cannot produce at least in the United States, you cannot produce food for sale in your house.
Right. Yeah, ask the Amish, right? They get in trouble every now and then for selling pies and things like that on their roadside stands. So very interesting on that side, right? So you have to be aware of these things. But Tammy brings up a good point that we'll put into the conversation now, right? Is one of the lessons I've learned in manufacturing. So at one point, I was working for a company where we had 18 of our own plants. We had sales of around 3.5–4 billion a year, and we had a network of 40 co-packers that we used within our operations, right? A lot to manage. And some were big co-packers, some were doing small things, etc. But to Tammy's point, right, that volume with co-mans is super important. Yes, absolutely. So think of it as a bell curve. And you are a small entrepreneur, right? You're like, "Oh, geez, I have to go to this co-packer and they're not paying any attention to me because we're a small part of their business." Mm-hmm. Here's the interesting side. The other side works the same. If I'm a large manufacturer and there's only 2 or 3 co-manufacturers in the United States who actually have the capacity and the volume to take care of me, I still have to deal with them too because there's nowhere else to go, right? Yep. That sweet spot in the middle where you're the perfect customer, very small, and it's constantly moving, right?
Yes.
So
and it depends on the product and the process.
Right, exactly. So if I'm a company that specializes in co-manufacturing, there are companies out there that do this. My whole job is to fill up my lines, right? And I've got a whole bunch of customers. Let's say that I have 30 different customers. So to Tammy's point, some small, some medium, a couple of large ones, right? And I've got to keep that mix balanced all the time to make my business successful, because plants are only profitable when they're running, right? If I've got lines that are down, I'm not making money. Right. So I'm always trying to figure out that right balance.
Like we said before, Bryan, yes, of course, the purpose of these, food safety chats and everything that we do as consultants is fundamentally focus on food safety. But right. I mean, at the end, we need to make extremely clear that companies are, built and founded and whatever to make money.
Yes.
In a safe way. In the case of food, yes, in a safe way. But companies are designed to make money, and we cannot forget that whenever we're doing our jobs.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's a good way to summarize that, because the process of finding a co-packer, co-manufacturer, whatever you want to call them, is a business decision first and foremost. And here's the important lesson with this, and write this down. And Renee, put this in the notes for the conversation, please, is for food safety, the only point that you have any leverage is before the contract is signed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Once the contract is signed, your ability to negotiate what you need to get done at that co-packer goes down. And it usually goes down a lot, right? So to build on this point is, I'm thinking about using a co-manufacturer, right? I go out and I source one. It's in the right spot and it's got the right lines and they make good products and all these type of things. Operational, that's what I'm thinking, right? Line speed, price per unit, delivery, logistics, storage, right? I'm thinking operationally and supply chain. It's very important, if you're involved with food safety and a co-manufacturer, to be involved in those conversations up front. Right.
Yep. And to your point, Bryan, when you say the things that are expectations, the quality of these guys, the sharing of some data, at one point, the agreement, like you mentioned, contracts, agreements, whatever. And in those agreements, making sure that we define, number one, the specifications of the product that they're going to be making for us. The specification, within the specification, not only the ingredient, but also packaging material and processing conditions, COA requirements, if any, to prove that the product is matching with the specifications, making sure that, and I wrote these notes specifically because we are saying copackers. Well, these copackers could be in the United States. These copackers could be foreign suppliers.
Yes.
And at that point, these guys must be in compliance with the regulations applicable to them in the country of manufacture, whatever that country is. And the product must also be in compliance with the regulations in the country of sale. Whatever I have aquí, making sure that the contract somehow says that these guys cannot make any change unless they let us know ahead of time, before they change. Hey, we're thinking about making this change. Is that okay with you guys? We believe that by making this change, we're not going to be affecting the quality or the safety of your product, blah, blah, blah. And then having a nice conversation. Yes, after that, I don't think that there is a problem, but it's about the notification ahead of time. And the other topic for this is the suppliers. They are going to be sourcing the ingredients that you're going to be using for the manufacturer. Are those suppliers going to be approved by them or by you?
Right.
That's a good point.
Who's buying? Right. So in some cases, you're supplying the materials. It's like, okay, co-manufacturer, here's all the raw materials. I want you to make this for me. In other situations, you say, no, I don't want to worry about that. You buy the ingredients, and then I'll pay you for the finished product. I don't want to worry about anything else.
Yes.
And who does that? Right?
Yes.
Who's managing that? What are the specifications? This is your product, right?
Yeah.
And that's why quality and food safety needs to be involved before the contract is signed. And you need to make sure that the operational team lets you go to those locations and audit them and see what you're actually getting into.
Yep. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah. And so part of this then too is when you go and you look at these co-mans, is you're helping to set those expectations. Because again, in this example, if you're a co-manufacturer, let's say that you have 30 customers, Jose, and you're manufacturing all these different products for all these different people. How does that work? Right. So how do they maintain your confidentiality? How do they make sure that your secret formulas aren't laying around the plant and another customer of that copacker is walking through and says, oh, that's nice. Oh, here's how my competitor makes their product. Because you need to check on that, right? So if you're a granola bar manufacturer using a copacker, Are other granola bar manufacturers using that copacker too? Probably. Right?
Probably.
So how do they keep those things secret? How do you keep those things specific? So one of the things we did at a past company is the flavor of our product was super important, right? Very, very important. It was like a vanilla type proprietary flavoring stuff. And the flavor companies make these things for you. And you don't want to disclose that information to a copacker. So we had an arrangement with our kosher certification group where we would label those flavor blend A and send it to our copacker. And the copacker didn't know what was in it. The kosher groups knew what was in it. We knew what was in it, and we approved it from a food safety standpoint and said, full disclosure relative to allergens and pathogen testing and things like this. But because of, trade secrets, we can't tell you everything that's in it, which was tricky with FSMA, right? But
it is because let me tell you one thing. I mean, seems like the conversation is flowing around that the copackers are going to be doing something wrong, and that is not the intention here. The intention here is just to highlight the potential risk. Well, but if I'm a copacker and you send me something that I have no clue what's inside, I'm going to tell you, Bryan, I'm not going to do that for you because I'm not sure if by doing this with you, I'm going to be potentially affecting other products that I'm making because I have no clue what's in your product. And I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do this.
Right. And if that's the case, those discussions need to take place before the contract is signed, because once the contract is signed, it's too late.
Yes.
Too late. Right.
I mean, and you say too late. One of the comments that you made before, it's about trust, is about, having a very good communication with your copackers and transparent. So maybe because things happen, maybe there is something missing from the contract. Okay, that's fine. But if it's fine for the product and if it's okay for the copacker to make sure that no other products are going to be affected by the manufacturing of your products, I don't see any problem doing something that may not be part of the contract at that point. Eventually, the parties may agree, which most likely is going to be one clause in the contract. They say, well, whenever we identify that there is something that is important to add to this contract, we just sign a new contract, adding this new clause, and we sign it, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jennifer makes a good point here. I want to make sure to highlight this so that everybody makes sure that they understand it too. It's 100% brand risk. Liability falls on the brand owner, not the co-manufacturer, right? If there's a recall of your product, it's going to be your name. It's your company's name on the recall, not the co-man, right? So if it's Bryan's granola bars has a recall, right? I'm responsible, right? So you need to understand that, and you need to have those processes in place. To your point on the contract side of things, Jose, the way I structure these is I will include as addendums to the contract the quality information. So I'll put together a quality manual, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later of how I approach that. And I'll put those requirements in there that we're talking about, right? You have to have a food safety plan. You have to let us know if FDA comes in your plant. You have to let us know if whatever situation happens, right?
Yep.
And the contract then is divided up into the main piece of the contract, which is we talked about the operational guys are concerned about. So pricing and these type of things. And then I include the quality information as an appendix, right? So appendix A or addendum A or whatever. That way, if in the future I have to change something, we can just send them an update to the appendix. And I worded in there that says we can update these without updating the main contract, because you do not want to open up the pricing element. So let's say that you had a really good operations team who negotiated just amazing pricing, right? And the co-packer's like, oh man, we messed up on this. If you go back and try and renegotiate the contract to put in new quality elements, now that co-packer's like, yes, now we can renegotiate everything. Right? And people are not going to be happy with you if that happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's possible, that things happen, Bryan. Accidents happen. We're humans, so that's fine. Now, regarding the comment, and eventually we will need to discuss this in more detail in a different time, maybe. I don't know. I'm just going to make a comment. If you have a copacker and they are manufacturing, making the product for you, but they're making the products legally, they are responsible for the product against the FDA.
Yes.
Okay. The brand owner, the brand is what is going to suffer because of a recall. But when the FDA goes after the brand and say, oops, we have identified some product in the market that is your brand, what you are going to say, what the brand owner is going to say, well, I mean, yeah, it's my brand and I'm sorry, but these are the guys that manufacture the product. And the FDA is going to be focusing on the company that manufactures, because the manufacturer is the one, according to the law, responsible for the manufacturing of the product, for the safety and the fitness of the product to become edible and whatever, fit for food.
Well, exactly. And that's why it's really important when you structure your contract on the food safety side to say, if FDA comes in your plant for whatever reason, right? So for an inspection, or they're there for a recall or an investigation or whatever, and it's not your product, I still want to know, right? Because FDA can be walking through that facility and say, oh, what's that stuff over there, right? Oh, that's another customer. FDA doesn't care, right? You're all at the same facility. In FDA's viewpoint, you're all being regulated under that same requirement for that facility. So you have to be very aware of those things.
Yeah. Actually, John, Bryan, to your point, again, the copacker manufacturer for, I don't know, 3 different brand owners. Okay. And you, in your contract, you're telling them, you need to tell me if there is any issue. And the FDA goes there, and the FDA finds, oh my goodness, I don't know, cockroaches in one area. Well, they were performing an inspection of the facility. Is that going to affect you? Of course, yes.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if they are making, product for any other company, they're affecting you. The fact that is adulterate, that they are not working under sanitary conditions is affecting you.
Yeah, absolutely. John brings up a point here around contracts, right? So small startups won't have the leverage to make these kinds of contracted requirements. I'm going to push back on that one. This is an interesting rule in negotiation. This is something I learned, Jose, a while ago, is that both parties in a negotiation always think they have the weaker hand. So for example, I'm selling a house, right? And I put it on the market, and I've got to move for a new job in California, right? And I'm like, oh, geez, I got to sell this house, right? I've got to get, my new place set up, and I've got to get out for my new job. And man, I hope I didn't overprice the house, and I hope my realtor's doing their job right? Worry. On the buying side, so you're looking at buying my house. You're like, oh gosh, this is a beautiful house, and I really need to find a house, and this is the perfect area with the schools for my kids and everything else. I'm going to put an offer on this house. Man, oh geez, I know there's other buyers interested in this house. I really, really hope I get this, and I hope my offer is accepted, right? You both think you're in a bad position. Co-packers are the same. Everybody's in the same boat. It's a universal
human
rule.
nature.
Right. Co-packers need a variety of sizes, right? You can only fit so many puzzle pieces into that location, right? So you need a combination of large customers, medium customers, and small customers. The small customers fill in the gaps in your manufacturing schedule, right? Plus, if you're a co-man and you just have, let's say you have 2 main customers and that's all you have, you're at risk. Because what happens if one of those big customers says, hey, you know what, Bryan, you're a terrible client to work with. We're stopping our contract.
You're out.
Right now, I have a huge problem if I own that co-manufacturing location. I'm down half the time, right? I'm gonna have to start laying people off and everything else, right? That's terrible, right? So I'm very worried about that too. So don't think that you always have the weaker hand. Plus, what we're talking about here is food safety, right? This is not negotiable, right?
Not negotiable.
This is not us making up rules, right? This is us explaining to them, you need to comply with what the regulations say. And this document and this understanding is making sure that both of us are aligned around that. Right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Because again, Bryan, working with copackers, I have worked in my life a lot with people that are copackers. If you hear the stories, they struggle a lot with the small companies. because they say, oh my goodness, these guys have no idea of all of the regulatory requirements. They just think, okay, make this for me and that's it.
Right.
Okay. And I remember auditing, I audited a copacker for years. And I said, well, guys, what about packaging material? What about if your supplier, because you're not your supplier, your client is telling you, can you do this product for me? Yes, I can do this. Not a problem. And in the formula, they are telling you, you need to add 50% of weight of arsenic. Are you going to do it? Hello, a little bit of thinking about food safety. No, we cannot do that.
Right.
They may say, put this label. Maybe that label is not the one that is following all of the requirements in 21 CFR 101 label of the food. Yeah. Maybe. Who's the one responsible? The one that put the label to the product. You co-packers cannot blame the owner. Oh, because they send me the label. No, it's up to you to verify that the label is in full compliance with everything. And then you can start, manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, part of what we're talking about here, and it's coming up in the comments, which I love, right? That means that we're getting our message through relative to this, is that when you're dealing with a co-manufacturer, and let's be honest, everything that we do in our career is diplomacy, right? If you come in, right, just banging your fist and saying, you're going to do this, and this is what we require, right? That co-packer is going to say, I don't want to work with you, right? You're too difficult, right? I'm going to go somewhere else. And even if you're working in a big company, Jose, and so I was running quality assurance at a huge company, and I had a team of people, right? Counting the plants and corporate, hundreds of people indirectly or directly reporting through me. But guess what? That was still only a small percentage of the company. There was another 90% who I had no authority over, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to work outside of your direct responsibility, right? Yeah. If you think that being a successful leader is just telling people, go do this, go do that, and that they have to do it because you're their boss, you're not going to succeed, right? And being able to develop a good co-manufacturing relationship is a very good test of your ability to be diplomatic, right?
And to your point, Bryan, it is possible that if the copacker is in financial trouble, at the beginning, they're going to say, oh, yes, we can do your product. And they're going to start manufacturing the product, and that's it. But as soon as they pick up other clients that are easy on them, they're going to put you out.
Exactly.
So it's about being diplomatic. It's about being, it's about culture, food safety culture. It's about understanding other people and asking for things that are necessary for food safety and for the products need to be fit for food, probably to have some quality, but that's it. Right. Simple terms and simple conversations, and fundamentally that's it.
Yeah, and co-packers, and this goes with any human relationship, right?
Yeah.
There's a gauge of how difficult you are to deal with, right? Which goes up and down.
Yeah.
And those co-manufacturers are constantly evaluating that too. So if you're changing your orders or canceling your orders, if you're making unreasonable demands, if you are not paying your bills on time, all of these type of things, right? That PETA, pain in the ass meter, is going up, right? And at some point, that co-manufacturer is going to say, okay, that's it. I'm done. This isn't worth it. Yeah. Or they come back and say, okay, the next round of negotiation for pricing, we're going to triple their price because that's how hard they are to work with. And if they accept the price, great, we'll make some extra money for a while. If not, fine. I don't want to work with them anyway.
Right? But you know what, Bryan? If I'm the co-packer, there is no money for paying for PETA.
Right.
In my opinion, personally. Right. We should be working nicely together, working towards the same goal, not in an environment that it's kind of difficult. Yeah. That is not productive.
Yep. Tanya makes a good point here. A small customer is a risk to a co-packer because there's a lot of work that goes into adding to the line. Yep. It affects the food safety plan and has to be integrated in each product, added or removed. A lot of work. Most co-packers have big fish clients and trust they are biased. Yes. But again, right, they have to balance all of these type of things. And in some ways, to kind of build on our point, if I'm a small manufacturer, My food safety may be better because I'm going to a co-manufacturer, because they have a sophisticated operation far beyond what I have as
They
a young
may
entrepreneur.
have a sophisticated operation.
Yeah.
May.
Mhm.
Maybe the very, very, very small brand owner is the one that has a lot of brains under his brand. And
Yes.
now by going to one of these monsters, hey guys, you need to do this and this. No, we have been doing this for years and everything is fine. Well, you're doing this wrong.
Right.
It's
And,
possible.
right. And that's where that diplomatic skill that we've been talking about becomes so important, because you need to, as a food safety professional, you need to get around to the other side of the table and work with your counterpart at that copacker and say, hey, listen, you and I have the same goals, right? You and I don't want to recall. We want to have jobs. We want to protect the consumers. Let's work together to make sure that happens, right?
Yeah.
And now that person at the co-man say, oh, okay, good, right? This is someone who understands, because they're in a very hard position, right? As we talked about in the beginning, right? They have lots of different people who are demanding lots of different things, and it's a juggling act, right? The bigger you get, the harder that becomes.
Yeah, and to your point, Bryan, because we're on the same side, the fact is that if there is any problem with the product and the product at some point is going to be recalled, you are the ones that will be receiving the FDA. You are the ones that will be dealing with a 483 and a warning letter, or a warning letter.
Right.
Yes, my brand is going to be affected and my name is going to be affected. Fine. But you're the ones that have the real problem with the FDA, not me.
Right.
Eventually, I'm not saying that this is the right thing, but at the end, the brand owner may say, you know what? I'm going to quit with this brand and I'm going to create a new brand and find another copacker, and that's it. But the company that received the FDA with the 483 and everything, that is going to remain part of their performance if you go online to the FDA website, and that is going to show up that these guys are not doing good.
Right. And that's why it's so important to set these expectations ahead of time, right? Because in quality, the only thing that we control is what's specified, right? If things are ambiguous and things aren't clear, as a co-man, okay, fine, I'm just going to keep doing things the way I normally do, right? And if I have a problem and I come back to the co-man and say, hey, you didn't do this right, I'm going to say, well, where does it say I need to do that? Oh, now I've got a problem, right? And I look at it and say, oh, they're right. It doesn't say that. Oh, right. So now you have to try and beg and plead and, oh, come on, can you do this for me, please? Type things, right? Very difficult. And making sure that those specifications, as you mentioned earlier, Jose, are absolutely rock solid, that co-man understands exactly what your product needs to be, right? And that's going to come from your R&D groups and your other company, within the organization, to make sure that they understand, right? And our job in food safety and quality then is to maintain that standard and work with that co-man to do that, right? If, for example, you have arbitrary standards, let's say that I come to you as a co-packer and say, okay, Jose, I want you to make this coffee for me, and it has to taste great. And if you say yes to that, oh boy, are you in trouble, right? Because let's say you make me a batch of coffee and I taste it, and I'm like, this isn't great. I don't like this. This is awful, right? And you're going to say, no, this is great. This is what I think is great. And I'm like, no, right? Now where do you go, right? Now
Bryan,
you're going to have a
you're just describing, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're just describing what we discussed in one of these chats in the past. I'm a fan of beverage. It's a protein beverage for riding my bike.
Yeah.
And one time I was trying to purchase and I was not able to find it. So I went online. And when I was looking at the reviews, there was a review from a lady saying, your drink tastes horrible. And I love it.
Right. People are unique, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we have that disagreement over that coffee, and let's say that you made me 50,000 cases of this coffee, right? Worth, let's say $500,000, right? And I say, I'm not going to take it. And you say, yes, you are. I made it for you to your specification. You're going to pay for it, right? Now you've got a giant financial fight. And that financial fight is going to bleed over into everything else, because now that relationship is damaged. And on the quality and food safety side, it's gonna be reflected there. Because I come back to you and I say, okay, Jose, this bad tasting coffee you made, I need corrective actions. And you're going to say, corrective actions for what? I made it to your specification. There's no corrective actions.
Yeah.
Where do you go? Where do you go from there? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now imagine that's a food safety problem.
Brian, like you mentioned, and we have been discussing this same thing since the beginning of the chat. Without very robust specifications, we're done.
Right. Absolutely.
There is no way. Remember, you know what I call the specifications of a product, assuming that they are properly developed? Critical limits. Mm-hmm. Specification sheet for a product are critical limits. This is my quality. Below this, not acceptable. Above this, fine. This is my whatever microbiological content. Below this, acceptable. Above this, not acceptable, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's see. So Jennifer's making some great comments here. There are so many stories in the private label industry where the private label sensory panel shows that the customers do not like the product because it's not the same as the current leader. So it's always good to know what your customer wants. Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. One of my nightmares in quality is when you have product cuttings at corporate and a bunch of executives get together to evaluate a product. Right. And then the marketing person tastes it and the salesperson tastes it and the CEO tastes it and they make a judgment.
Yep.
And they're not qualified in most cases to do that. Right.
Yes.
And they can cause a lot more harm. Right. You can look at that for directional information, but you need much, much more technical data and evaluations for sensory. Right. Sensory is an extremely complicated thing.
Yes.
And you need to understand that correctly.
Because
so really, I think, Jose, I mean, oh boy, I mean, this we could continue on this a long time, right?
Yeah.
But let's bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level for closing out our talk here today, right? I think what you need to understand here, right, when you're dealing with co-mans is what you're doing here is you're trading flexibility for control, right? You're ceding some of your control over making safe food products to another party. Right. And that's a huge responsibility. You need to structure the agreements in advance so that you have built-in requirements for food safety. Mm-hmm. You need to have the specifications and all these requirements ahead of time. You need to audit them to make sure they're doing what they say they're doing and all these type of things so that you can build that relationship with them and do it diplomatically, right? You don't have control over a lot of different things in this situation. So you need to work with them, not against them. Yes. Because if you do, they're going to fight you, right? Because they have other customers too. And if you're a small, right, as we talked about here, the Jennifer, right, they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And you need to make sure and be clear with that. Now, if you're dealing with a co-man, because a lot of times you'll come into a company and there's already existing co-packing networks, right? Well, now you need to work on those relationships a little differently, right? You have to be more diplomatic. And you may have to wait for the next contract negotiation so that you can put those things in and work with those, right?
Yeah.
But just like everything else in what we do in quality and food safety is you need to be specific and you need to be very concrete in what your requirements are. The more arbitrary you are, the harder your life is going to be.
Yeah. And for the safe of the product, for the safety of the product and for the quality of the product, that is going to also affect those two factors. Yes.
Right.
If you're difficult with a copacker, yes, they are not going to like you. And for that same reason, they're not going to pay that much of attention to your products.
Right. And if I'm a difficult customer for a copacker, and I'm sending emails and I'm trying to get messages for people and nobody's responding to me, oh boy, I'm in a bad spot.
Yep.
Really bad spot. Don't get yourself in that position, right? It's something that we talk about on here and other consultants talk about as well, is your technical skill set is important, but your people skill set is just as important, right? If you're going to succeed, you need to be able to understand these concepts and be able to explain them to people who don't understand these concepts. Right. And that may be your operational team or your regulatory group or your legal team. Right. We need to be able to communicate that. Right. And that's part of the reason why we do these food safety chats on Fridays is help get that message out and give people new ways thinking about these problems, right? Of how you can tactfully address them.
And at the end, Bryan, like I'm telling, fundamentally all my clients and everybody that I'm talking or discussing any of these issue, at the end, if you use a systems approach, what is the goal? The goal is not defined by GFSI. The goal is defined by the authorities in each and every single country, and the goal is the same.
Yes.
It's the prevention of adulteration, contamination, and misbranding of the product. You call it as you wish. That is the goal. So if there are two parties and one party is the owner of the brand and the other party is the one that is manufacturing and packing the products and or packing the products, well, those two parties, they will need to agree on how they are going to be manufacturing those products, as long as the products are fit for food and safe.
Right. And I mean, the bottom line is here, we're not asking for anything weird, right?
Yeah.
The rules of food safety and quality are universal, right? There's nothing in here that should be a surprise. If it is a surprise to them, it means they don't understand.
Yes.
Right? And so then we either need to work with them to help them understand it, or this is not going to be someone we want to work with.
Yeah.
Right? And you may have to make that decision. And the organization needs to understand if there's a food safety issue that is non-negotiable, it's a no, right? And the organization needs to have the ability to say no, right? So there are lines to Jennifer's point.
Now, imagine all of these conversations that we're having, and because, I mean, we're in the U.S., we're just thinking about a co-manufacturing here in the U.S. Now, imagine all of these issues with a co-manufacturer that is located in whatever, Central America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, whatever it is. Oh my goodness. Now the problem is huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So part of this too, right, is we've covered a ton of ground here today. And part of this is what we talked about at the beginning too, Jose, is don't feel like you have to figure out all this stuff on your own, right? Work with a consultant, work with someone who's been through all this and understands all these little nuances of what needs to be done. It can help you create a quality manual. It can help you create contract structure and appendixes to meet these requirements, right? And that's where my sponsor here, EAS Consulting, they have a huge stable of expertise who can help you with these things. And they also have some really great training programs too. And as part of the sponsorship for my chat, they offer 15% off of training. So you can go to easconsultinggroup.com/training and check out their programs. And if you like something, or if you want to put something together custom, I don't know, copacker management, they can do that. And if you put Bryan in the checkout code with a Y, they'll give you an extra 15% off. So win-win, right? You can talk with your bosses and hopefully get something going in those areas, right? So to Jennifer's point, and she's made some amazing comments here today, thank you, is that being ignorant to these type of risks is not an excuse, right? You have to understand these things.
Is that an option?
What you don't know is extremely dangerous, right? From both sides of this equation. So make sure that you're building these things out.
Yeah.
Any closing comments, Jose, from your side?
No, I believe that, like you mentioned, and it's amazing. There is one thing I'm going to say to your point, Bryan. FDA says that the food safety plan will be developed and implemented and maintained and verified and validated by APCQI. And APCQI could be an in-house or could be an outsider. What is an outsider? It's a consultant.
Yeah.
If you go to Codex Alimentarius and you read that, there is some word in there saying, if you don't have the knowledge to go through this, let's find someone that is going to help you to do this. And if you go to the other regulations in other places, it's exactly the same. You don't have the knowledge, find help.
Bam. Right. So don't feel that you're on your own.
Yeah.
So part of this in closing, and thank you everybody for the feedback. We really appreciate that. We do this for you, right? We do this to help spread food safety knowledge. And part of this as well is what topics do you want us to talk about, right? So my email is here. It's kind of cut off. So it's barmentrout@Food Leadership Group. And the only piece that's missing there is the .com. So send me an email. Is there a topic that we haven't covered on these chats that you would like to hear about? We want to help in those areas. So please let us know. And again, next week we'll be back, right? So next Friday the 13th next week. So we'll be back on May 13th at the same time. So 8 a.m. in the lovely Colorado, 10 a.m. in beautiful Florida, and wherever else you're in the world. Please join us for the live stream, because having this interaction, as you can see with the people who are talking and chatting with us, makes it just that much more fun, right? So please join us next week. Again, we're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube for the next food safety chat. So, man, I mean, co-pack management, guys, super, super important. Hopefully we've been able to help in this area. So take what we've talked about here. Think about it. If there's any way we can help, love to help. So Jose, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, my friend. And
You too, Bryan.
Talk to everyone soon.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Oh, get my hand in frame there. There we go.